The commercial brokers are the ones with all the data. The
Yeah.
commercial brokers on any, if you want to get into the office building space, call the brokers. They know. I mean, if you want to know what market is down and which one is up, call the brokers. Call the one in your market where you live, and they can probably connect you with somebody in their team in another market.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I am your host, Yona Weiss. Great to be here on another beautiful day with Jeff Davis. I mean, it's pouring rain outside, but it's beautiful because life is good. And, I think that's really the approach that I have. Every day is a beautiful day. Is not dependent on the weather. That's what I've come to learn. But great to have you, Jeff. How you doing today?
We're okay. We're okay. You and I were just talking. There's just a lot of sickness running through the Davis household right now.
Well,
other than that, everything's fantastic.
Right. It's like, when everything goes wrong, it's like just make a joke to or someone like one thing goes wrong, another thing goes wrong, and just things keep going wrong. I used to make a joke to my wife, like,
yeah, it's like that. What's that game where you're popping the thing on the head?
Whack-a-mole.
Just whack-a-mole. It is absolutely whack-a-mole.
So I was saying, like, yeah, hey, besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Like, everything could possibly go wrong, but what else is good? You got to think on the good side in every situation. Anyways, great to have Jeff Davis here. He is a real estate investor, like every single other guest on our show, but would love to learn about how you're different. What differentiates you? I know you've been in the supply chain business for a long time, and that's your focus currently. Let us know. I know you're in Texas. What else would you like to tell our listeners?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I'm a dad and a husband. I guess first and foremost, I'm a husband and then a dad. But for my W-2, for my job, I'm a global logistics sales executive. And that was we work in supply chain. We help companies move a product, whether it's raw materials or finished goods, in and out of the country, in and out of the United States, or even from factories overseas to other parts of the distribution networks overseas. And so it was a very hot topic a couple of years ago because the entire supply chain shut down with COVID. And that's my day-to-day job. I'm also a real estate investor. Back in 2014, I began investing in single-family rentals so that my commissions could earn commissions. Mm-hmm. I've scaled up over the past few years into multifamily and industrial warehousing just because it's a little bit easier and more passive. Right. And so I try to bring that insight and that knowledge to other people in my industry about supply chain and how to just kind of support your income and bring some stability.
Right.
We're in a volatile market. We're in a volatile industry. And having that passive income is very, very important. And it's a way to take control of your income.
Sure. And I mean, being in the supply chain industry, you're dealing with people all throughout the spectrum on that chain. And one thing that I find fascinating is many people who have a W-2 in a specific industry end up, investing in multifamily, doing syndications, which I know you're involved with, and then teaching others who are in their industry that they can relate with a lot about these investment opportunities. And it obviously bridges a huge gap in terms of how people are in just one industry and they don't really know much else about that. And all they're told about investing is usually their retirement account or the stock market. And here you are, someone who is in the same boat as them, in the same shoes, and you're able to teach them and show them other ways to invest. One thing that I've really fascinated about is obviously the industrial markets is one of the hottest markets, one of the hottest asset classes of the past few years, and continues to grow as online shopping and all these kinds of distribution centers are popping up everywhere. And I think we'll continue to do so. Are you investing in industrial, like distribution center type warehouses? And tell us a little bit more about that thesis.
Yeah. My thesis on that is in the supply chain and logistics industry, we already have our jobs and our livelihood tied up where we might work in an office with a warehouse in the back. I mean, the bulk of my career has been spent in that environment. And then moving product from a customer's facility to another warehouse or to our warehouse. We're going to customers' facilities in a warehouse. I'm going to a meeting right after this at a warehouse. So the bulk of our career is spent, like I say, growing up in whether it's manufacturing warehouses, distribution facilities, storage facilities, laydown yards. And so my thesis is we already live and breathe this space.
Right.
Why not become a part owner of it as well?
Mm-hmm.
And so in supply chain, we also know where the growth is going. We're kind of
You have a pulse on that. Yeah. Just through your own
have
business.
a pulse, right? Before inflation happened, we saw prices increasing well before inflation. So I was kind of ringing that bell of this isn't sustainable. Why isn't consumer pricing reflective of the supply chain costs and logistics costs? Because it's 10x. Wow. And the customers are paying it, our customers who were wholesale. And sure enough, by Q2 of last year, inflation hit, 6-7%. Well, now shipping costs and supply chain costs are 95% lower.
Wow.
So we should see that translate to the consumer level.
Hopefully.
In about 6 to 9 months, inventories in all these warehouses is at all-time high. The cost of the goods that they want to sell, not sold, because they haven't sold.
Are there specific markets that you target? I mean, obviously, you're based in Texas. That's a huge industrial market, but there are many other, I think, around most transportation hubs around the country. There are, strategic logistic markets, would you say? Or, tell me about that in terms of the different actual market location-wise.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. In Texas is unique because if you go to Austin, it's there's a lot of tech. Mm-hmm. There's also a little bit of the chemical and raw material, very little. Dallas has everything. Dallas has a lot of everything. They've got medical, they've got finished goods, they've got a little bit of tech, they've got a ton of retail. Between Dallas and Chicago, these are centralized locations for the U.S. to get anywhere, right? Think about rail systems and interstate systems. It is very centralized and easy for product to come in from overseas and be distributed to the U.S. consumer market. So massive DCs there.
Yeah.
Houston, don't know if you've heard, but we are the oil and gas center of the world. So we are kind of a gateway for that.
Right.
The Midwest, a lot of automotive. It's a big automotive sector.
Right.
And then what happens is that center spans out, right? So just because Detroit is where the big three sit, well, then outside of there, we'll have all of their subsidiaries and the OEMs. And I don't play in that market very much. I just know from my peers who have automotive sectors that they all sit up there. And what happens is there's a lot of transporter up and down from Canada, just like we have a lot down south with Mexico, a ton of trade in Mexico.
Absolutely. And you're obviously sitting on the Gulf, and you have not only ground transportation, air transportation, which is huge in logistics as well, but you have obviously water, sea transportation. And I'm sure there's a lot of in the docks. The port of Houston is just huge in terms of the transport that's coming in.
It absolutely is. It's taking a lot away. So you have your Gulf Coast ports, which are Houston, New Orleans a little bit, Mobile, but then you get over to kind of that Gulf and East Coast port sections, Savannah and Charleston. These are taking away from Los Angeles, and they're taking away from New York, where they don't want to deal with the various regulations and union kind of stop and starts. It's just easier to deal with these ports. There's some physical restrictions that they need to get into. to handle larger vessels and more cargo. But yeah, the sea is a big deal. The ocean freight is a major component of shipping.
So I want to get back to the investing side a little bit. I'm curious, how does
Sorry.
one get into, I'm it's just curious for me, how does one get into investing in industrial real estate? I mean, we hear all about multifamily and there's all kinds of masterminds and syndications and there's, a dime a dozen really, to be honest. And I come across all of them. and But industrial, we don't hear about so much. I mean, are there specific operators that you invest with that are buying industrial and you're investing passively? Are you buying your own facilities, bringing on investors? I mean, how does one get into that? That's what I'm curious about.
Yeah, it's a great question. So take the same different approach than what we did with multifamily. And so specifically, I'm only, going to be a co-GP or a general partner, right? I'm not going to operate. I have a full-time job.
Right.
I won't be that part. Look into the markets that I foresee growth and find the operators that are buying the properties that have been doing it for a long time. Who is successful? And those are the operators that I want to partner with. Just like the way that I did it with apartments, that's how I want to proceed because that's where I see the least amount of risk, the most amount of success.
Right.
But I just have to have a little bit of an edge because I know where there's some growth markets. I happen to have these meetings with clients and they're divesting overseas, they're nearshoring and these markets. And so I just kind of think, all right, there's going to be some demand for product and then people. So it actually leads to multifamily as well. Who are the players in these specific markets? And then I go and I try to find strong operators, not somebody who has taken down a deal or two, but somebody who is consistently operating successfully.
Right.
Because it's a team sport no matter what. These are multi-million-dollar acquisitions and you want to have a strong team.
100%. I mean, it's hard enough when you're dealing with multifamily. I think there's so much more, and maybe I'm wrong, but to me, there seems to be so much more data about multifamily in growth markets. Industrial real estate seems to be a little bit more off the grid in terms of the public eye, the public specter. Obviously, you can get in, but I mean, you mentioned that you're using the same process to find those operators, but are you using the same methods in how to find them? Meaning, I don't know. Well, tell me more about that. Like, how did you find the multifamily operators? And then we'll maybe go from there. Because I am curious. I've found them in a little bit less traditional way because of my networking and through social media and just seeing the conservation business that I have people coming to me. And I see, all of the operators, all the players across the country. And I know who's doing well, who's doing a lot of deals. And for me, it's kind of a bird's eye view for that. But I'm curious how someone in your position finds these type of operators.
Yeah, it's no different. It is absolutely, it's no different. Who's in our masterminds that's actually doing these types of deals? Who is, who's on LinkedIn? Who are the brokers, right? I would start, and actually I start with brokers and say, all right, who's your big operators and who's successful? And that's how I chose the mastermind. When I was getting out of single family and into multifamily, I thought, let me call these brokers because they know who's closing deals.
Absolutely.
And they're super open, right? Just talk to a broker and they'll tell you what's what.
That's a good idea. Obviously, I didn't think about it from that angle, but it makes so much sense. Obviously, the brokers, when you want to get deals, you go to the brokers, but they are the ones that know who's actually doing deals.
The commercial brokers are the ones with all the data. The commercial brokers on any, if you want to get into the office building space, call the brokers. And they know. I mean, if you want to know what market is down and which one is up, call the brokers. And call the one in your market where you live, and they can probably connect you with somebody in their team in another market.
It's true. Yeah. And they, especially the big brokerages, they have a lot of, even the smaller brokerages, they have connections and they have real, dealings with everyone nationwide.
Yeah. And it's, it's a conversation. You don't know where that leads. I don't think it's a very cloak and dagger process. It's all networking. It's all being transparent and telling people what you're trying to do
Yeah,
and how can they help you.
absolutely. So, as you mentioned earlier, there are markets that you see through your kind of insider data of being in the logistics and supply
Mhm.
chain industry. If you don't mind sharing, where are some of those like
Yeah.
markets that you think are actually, up and coming and maybe great places to invest in that may not be on, or maybe they are, but may not necessarily be on everyone's, list?
Yeah. So one I think is Kansas City, that Kansas City market. Another one I see is the border. I think the border is going to have a strong 5 to 7 year growth. What I don't know about the border and what I think about Kansas City is there existing to be renovated?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's enough. I think the growth there is going to be in new construction. I've been to facilities on the border, but I'm still kind of learning that. I'm going to have a conversation with a broker here tomorrow.
When you
But
say the border, can you be more specific?
I'm sorry, the Texas Mexico border.
Right. I mean, are there any specific like areas within that? Like, I'm not so familiar with the Texas Mexico border.
Yeah, so Laredo, McAllen,
Mm-hmm.
that
Okay.
those two borders, because Laredo is actually the largest port of entry in the US. It surpasses Long Beach.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, it's not counted. Well, it's counted by volume, but when people think of entries into the US by US customs, they think oceans, right? That's where your mind went. But in terms of transactional volume, Laredo is much larger.
Very
There
interesting.
are companies that are bringing their factories, they're replacing them from China and Asia
Mm-hmm.
to Mexico. Mexico's growing as kind of the new China. Do I have data to support that? It's basically just some meetings,
Mm-hmm.
but I find that really interesting.
I've heard that also. I actually had a great small, intimate kind of 15-person dinner last week with people, all over the country. And we came together and it's really fascinating conversation. And that was one piece that actually came up. People were talking about the growth of Mexico in terms of industry.
Yeah, I'll give you some context. So I talked to what's called a project vessel operator. And what they manage is, you understand containers. Well,
Sure.
these guys don't do that. Their vessels only operate product that can't fit in containers, massive pieces of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're talking, and what's the busy trades? Where are you moving product? Oil and gas. And he said, actually, we're just super busy moving product into Mexico from Asia because it's very busy. And we're going to be busy. Like their backlog is through 2025.
Wow.
And I had talked to a multifamily operator who sees the same thing. And he's investing heavily. He's planting his flag, getting everything ready for this same thing, probably similar to the dinner you had. So, what I think is that there's some infrastructure in Mexico that needs to take place,
Mm-hmm.
for
Sure.
labor and all of that crime.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to be handled,
Yeah.
but
Right. Yeah. Bribery, all that kind of stuff doesn't sound like so good over there.
yeah, so that's on my radar big time.
But I definitely hear that on the US side of the border, where obviously people are going to be bringing in more facilities, which are going to need more employees, going to need more housing. And I actually know, so I didn't think about it until you brought it up, but I know someone that broke ground a few months ago on a single family, like build to rent
Yeah.
development
Yeah.
in a McAllen. And that was just, I mean, it was like this border town, like, it's so small. It's like, why is someone like developing, houses over there? And now it makes so much more sense.
Yeah. When you look at it now, you think, how could that make sense? But a strong 5 to 7 year growth pattern. And it's already, for years, it's been the number one port in America, port of entry. So there's some insight.
There you go. That's fascinating. Extremely fascinating. And Kansas City, I mean, obviously you talk about the Midwest. There are a lot of places. I mean, Memphis, I would have thought would be another big market.
Yeah, and So these rail markets with the distribution and your big retailers are expanding out. They want to compete with Amazon for the next day delivery. And so a big LTL provider who is your final mile delivery that brings it to your house,
Mm-hmm.
they've already invested 20 million in infrastructure because they do not want to get flat-footed. They don't want to be caught again like COVID. They want to be able to support Amazon and Costco and Target for the next day. So now Target and Costco, they are investing big in warehousing distribution centers, and which means furthering it out,
Mm-hmm.
into these neighborhoods, which is going to be into the Midwest. They're already okay in Dallas and these markets. With that comes the secondary, right? And Target, Costco, Amazon, they have enough dry powder. We're not going to participate in that. It's
Right.
that next tier that the other providers that we can participate in.
Amazing. Fascinating. And it spills over to everything. Once you're dealing with industrial, you're dealing with population growth as well. And obviously, these factories, these facilities.
Yeah. They see the bounce in Q3, Q4,
Mm-hmm.
and they're smart people. I'm not that smart. I'm just following the leader right now. So they're going to put the market where they're going to put their dry powder where there's a population boom and an income boom that's going to support their return on capital. I just want to do what they're doing because they're much smarter than me.
Absolutely.
I tell people all the time, I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm just copying it.
Yeah. That's what a smart investor does, is just copying what successful people do. Awesome. Jeff, I want to transition now to what we call the final four. And I realize as I'm saying this that I always literally prep everyone before the call what the four questions are. But for you, we're just going to wing it because you're going to go in blind. So if I stump you, I stump you. But the four questions that I ask all my guests, the first one is, what's the worst job that you ever had?
So I have had a lot of jobs. The worst job was a waiter. That was it. I realized very soon I'm not built for business to consumer.
Mm-hmm.
I lasted 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I think I was fired. They were like, yeah, this isn't going to work. I talk too much and yeah.
All right. At least not like spilling drinks and, breaking dishes and stuff,
Yeah.
Okay. Second question. What is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
2 books. Who Not How was a big one. I know everybody says Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't think I grasped it just yet. Who Not How. And I'm still figuring out, like, how do I get this off my plate? And I'm getting there, but Limitless. I mean, if you haven't read it, this guy is super sharp, which he should be. He's like a brain doctor. Yeah, I'm really trying to perfect that speed reading and those brain exercises and tap into your brain. It's impressive. I think I might read it again.
Yeah, obviously you get more the second time you read anything. That's for sure. So go for it. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you bringing up those two. Who Not How is definitely one that has come up multiple times on the show, but Limitless, I don't think we've had anyone mention that book on the podcast before, although I might be mistaken after 300 and almost 50 episodes.
I did a summary. It's on bridgestoneinvest.com.
Go check it out, guys. Bridgestoneinvest.com. Check out the summary.
Shameless plug.
Absolutely. We'll put it in the show notes. Make sure everyone can go in and check that out. And third question for you, Jeff, is what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn? This could be anything.
I think I would like to know magic. I'd like little magic tricks. Those are fun. Good icebreakers at a party.
They're great. And kids love them.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. That's awesome. That's a lot of fun. I mean, it's definitely something that can be learned, although like anything in life, a real good skill takes a lot of practice.
It's all the practice. It's not just learning how the trick is done. It's all the practice.
Yeah. There's a lot of practice that's involved over and over, like hours and hours and hours of just.
I want to learn it without the practice.
Right. Exactly. That fourth and final question is, what does success mean to you?
I was just posting about this on a comment on one of our people's thing. What does success, happy family, God-fearing family. And that's about it. I think there's a lot of focus in our culture about money and a lot of materialism, but just want the family to be God-fearing and healthy, which we're struggling with right now with health,
Right.
but hopefully only temporary.
Right. Amen to that. I think that's so special. It's important that we have the right outlook in life. And I love that everyone has a unique answer, although not too unique, because many, many people have shared very similar sentiments, including myself on the show in terms of their definition of success. So I appreciate that. Finally, we mentioned earlier, to check out your website, but where's the best place for people to find you or reach out to you if they want?
Yeah, I have a new ebook out, and it is for supply chain investors. It's called chaininvestor.pro, chaininvestor.pro. So go check it out. It is different. It is 6 alternative asset classes that supply chain executives are investing in. It's a long title, but chaininvestor.pro, short website name.
We'll make sure to check it out, and we'll definitely put that in the show notes for everyone to check that out. And obviously you can find Jeff on LinkedIn, thanks to me and all the other people out there doing amazing things through the LinkedIn challenge we did most recently. It's really been a pleasure, Jeff. I appreciate you taking the time, and thanks again for joining me on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, and I wish you and your family much health and continued success. And
yes.
to our listeners, thank you guys for listening all the way to the end. Once again, I appreciate you. And remember, until next time, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.